The true form of the Ankylosaur revolution was recently unmasked from the shadows. I'm Reisuka, the cosplaying paleontologist PhD, and today I'm going to tell you all about how Spicomellus changed the evolutionary history of Ankylosaurids forever. Now from the top, what is Spicomellus and why is it so important? Well, this dinosaur belonged to the group Ankylosauria, which includes dinosaurs like Ankylosaurus and all the other dinosaurs that share a most recent common ancestor with it. The most common characteristics of these dinosaurs were that they walked on 4 legs, were herbivores, and had 2 important characteristics that were not found in any other dinosaur. Their backs were often covered in osteoderms, which are basically bony plates embedded in the middle layer or the dermal layer of the skin. And some of them had unique bony clubs and other weapons at the end of the tail that could shatter the bones of any dinosaur that was stupid enough to mess with them. I know what that's like. Now these are the common characteristics of the group Ankylosauria, but what Spicomellus had, no one saw coming. Their first fossils were found by fossil traffickers in 2019 in Morocco, and they were sold at auction to the British Museum of Natural History, where they were studied and stored. This palace's treasure, however, is quite unique. While all other ankylosaurians have their osteoderms separate from their skeleton and embedded in a layer of muscle above their bones, the armor of Spicomellus, including 1-meter-long spikes, are fused to their skeleton at the ribs. Now this is something that no other animal in the history of Earth has ever had. That's pretty cool, huh? Now before we move on, a video like this takes a lot of work to write, research, film, and edit. So why don't you leave a like, subscribe, and maybe even leave a comment. It helps me to get this video out to more people and educate them about dinosaurs. Plus, you get to learn about the latest dinosaur science and news from a real-life paleontologist, me, as soon as it's published, so you won't miss a thing. Now, let's unpause the game, shall we? Now, this unique armor of Spicomellus made paleontologists super hopeful that they would find more of this unique dinosaur if they kept digging in Morocco. And in 2023, a new party of phantom thieves made up of British, American, and Moroccan paleontologists had their prayers answered when they found more of this incredible dinosaur in the Moroccan desert. And this oasis of paleontological knowledge wasn't just a mirage. This find was first described in August of 2025, and they found that the super long spikes of Spicomellus were not just present on the middle of the body, but also along the neck and tail vertebra. Now, I'm starting to wonder if I chose the right cosplay to talk about this dinosaur in, because Spicomellus is starting to look a lot like Anguirus of Godzilla. Get it? Like Ankylosaurus, Anguirosaurus. But the bones that hit paleontologists with a surprise attack were, of course, the last bones at the end of the tail. These are called handle vertebrae, and they were fused and had associated ossified tendons, meaning that they had tendons that had actually turned into bone. As a paleontologist, I see these on dinosaurs a lot and on living birds, which are living dinosaurs, usually in their jaw and hip areas. These handle vertebrae are the last 2 vertebrae in the tail, which give support to the well-known and famous Ankylosaur bony club. Now, this indicates that Spicomellus definitely had some sort of tail weapon here, but we don't exactly know what it looks like because it hasn't been found yet. Now, having a tail weapon would be expected for most Ankylosaurs, but Spicomellus is different because it's from the Middle Jurassic, making it the earliest known Ankylosaur ever found. So, what did this tail weapon look like? Do you think we can figure it out together? Before the discovery of Spicomellus, we thought that the clubs of Ankylosaurids, like those of Ankylosaurus, the most famous dinosaur from the group, would only have been found during the early Cretaceous because that's when we first discovered them. But like I said, Spicomellus was much older than that. Even though the actual weapon of Spicomellus was not found, the anatomy of the handle vertebrae and the associated ossified tendons are much more similar to that of Ankylosaurs, which had a rounded bony club kind of like that of Ankylosaurus, and they are not as similar to animals within Ankylosauria like Stegosaurus that had more of a knife-like or blade-like weapon at the end of their tail. So although it's covered in spikes, it's likely that Spicomellus had a rounded tail club. Now the spikes of Spicomellus that were fused to its ribs combined with this likely large bony tail club completely changed the evolutionary history of Ankylosaurs right before our eyes, kind of like a palace ruler right before a boss fight. It might look ugly right now to face it, but we can use the power of the truth to see past the illusion of shadows. Persona! And what the power of the truth and more data from Spicomellus shows is that the evolutionary history of Ankylosauria is totally different than what we previously thought it was. I always think it's super exciting when that happens. A lot of paleontologists, they tend to get hung up on their own data in their glory days and try to make the data fit their old hypotheses. But the best scientists really are willing to look at new data in an unbiased way and not try to control it or make it fit their narrative, because really the world is not here to fit your narrative, people. The world is a big place, and especially when we're talking about animals that are extinct and evolution and all of these huge processes of nature that are so much bigger than us, we can't let our egos get in the way and think that nature has to conform to our idea of what the world should be like. Keep that in mind, my future paleontologists and scientists. So with that, it seems like Ankylosauria has awakened to their persona and has shown their true form. With the data of the only known Moroccan and Jurassic Ankylosaurid added to the evolutionary tree, the group called Parankylosauria ceased to exist. This group included dinosaurs with blade-like weapons like Antarctopelta and Saguaros. Now, if this evolutionary tree is correct, this means that these dinosaurs might only be similar to Ankylosaurids because of convergent evolution, and not necessarily because they share a most recent common ancestor with their fellow group members. The problem of whether something is homologous, meaning it actually comes from the same common ancestor, or whether it is part of convergent evolution, which you can learn more about in my Paleontology 101 series, is something that we run into all the time when we look at evolutionary biology, but especially when we're looking at paleontological data, because we're looking at extinct animals, and so we only have very few samples and a small number of species that we know about. So it's really difficult to tell what actually came from a common ancestor and how traits evolved in extinct animals over time. And so the Ankylosaurids are no exception to this difficult role. The only taxon that remained where Parankylosauria stood within Ankylosauria is Stegosaurus. So not only does this mean that Parankylosauria may be totally gone and a non-existent group, but one of the resulting topologies of this paper shows that Nodosauridae, which is a group that contains ankylosaurs that don't have a weapon at the end of their tail, like Nodosaurus, is possibly not a monophyletic group within Ankylosauria. This means that developing bony clubs, losing all of your weapons, or even developing a long spike-like weapon at the end of your tail like Stegosaurus may have happened multiple times over the course of Ankylosaur evolution. They changed their weapons more than Joker changes persona in a fight, for real. But we're not done, because one more thing about Spicomellus evolution continued to be a mystery. Why did this dinosaur have such long spikes, and what could it have used them for? And more importantly, why does no other ankylosaur that we know of have spikes like this? Lucky for you, you don't need to be as brilliant as Goro Akechi to figure out this mystery. The answer is that Spicomellus was empowered by the same Arcana card as I am, the Lover's card. Whenever us paleontologists and evolutionary biologists see a trait that has been extremely exaggerated to the point of overkill for their supposed function, usually there's only one reason why this would happen, and that reason is sexual selection. Sexual selection is a type of evolutionary selective pressure that occurs when a trait that mates favor or like more is selected for and passed on through generations, and it's a trait that helps the animal to attract mates and have more offspring. But other than that, it usually doesn't really have a function that helps in the survival of the species. All this is to say that Spicomellus probably got these long spikes because the dinosaurs in its genus with the long spikes are the ones who got the ladies. And so this trait kept getting passed along and exaggerated from generation to generation. I like 'em spiky, if you know what I mean. And that ain't no wild guess, because there are several reasons that show that defense was not their first priority. The first one is that although these long pointy spikes look scary, they're actually a lot easier to break and chip than shorter spikes would be. So they would be rendered useless in a lot of situations. The other reason is simply that Spicomellus just didn't live alongside any other animal that could get past even a more moderate level of a defense system. Most of the big theropods and crocodilians that were present during the late Cretaceous weren't living during the Middle Jurassic when Spicomellus lived. So most of the carnivores that it was facing were not nearly as strong and massive. But do you know who faced dinosaurs that were as tough as the final boss of a JRPG? All other ankylosaurs we've found, which all lived during the late Cretaceous. For example, the iconic Ankylosaurus with its bony club tail lived alongside T-Rex. Now, T-Rex is the animal with the greatest bite force of any living or dead land animal, and its bite could literally pulverize bone. However, Ankylosaurus is the only dinosaur found in the Hell Creek Formation without any bite marks on its body from the king of the dinosaurs, meaning that it may have been immune to T-Rex melee attacks. Just like me, this beautiful rose had thorns. The transition from having spikes that were probably just for show into having more functional weapon and armor could also be seen as a case of co-evolution. This happens when two or more species influence the evolution of each other. Just like strengthening the social link with me would grant Joker new personas and make me stronger. As Tyrannosaurids and other large theropods or crocodilomorphs started to attack and kill Ankylosaurids, they suffered a selective pressure to start fighting back. And that in return served selective pressure for their predators to be more efficient at killing them, thus resulting in a million years long arms race. And you thought that your grinding sessions in your RPGs were long? But does that mean that the Ankylosaurs of the late Cretaceous lost the power of the Lover's Arcana? Not in the slightest, baby. The authors of this paper argue that the change from spikes to more functional weapons and armor could have also been driven by sexual selection itself. Because instead of just showing off their spikes, Ankylosaurus males that lived closer to the late Cretaceous would have gotten mates by actually winning fights against other males. And this is likely true because we've found evidence of crushed bone that is the result of weapons of the same species in holotypes of fossils like Zool. Basically, we found evidence that Cretaceous Ankylosaurs would have used their own bony clubs to attack members of their own species. Now guys, I really appreciate your dedication to flirting, but all you have to do is treat me with respect and make me laugh and I'll be into you. There's no need to go breaking all your ribs. And that's what we know so far about Spicomellus afer. If you want to learn more about spiky ankylosaurids, why don't you watch this compilation of Godzilla and other kaiju as related to dinosaur paleontology. To awaken the true forms of dinosaurs, like and follow and subscribe for more. Love your dino mommy.